Good morning and welcome to the Ohio Home Inspector Network podcast, Inspector Talk. Today I have the privilege of being with Bill Fabian from Monroe Infrared. Bill, can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, as James said, my name is Bill Fabian. I'm Vice President of Monroe Infrared's training department. And this coming December will be 39 years since I got into the infrared industry. I have been dealing with infrared camera sales and infrared training and inspection services my entire career. 15 years ago, I started working with the home inspection industry and developed the Certified Residential Thermographer training class designed specifically for home inspectors. And since then, we've had over 3,000 home inspectors come through that course. And since COVID, how many times have you heard that? I put the class virtual using Zoom. So you can attend either in person or via Zoom. It is approved in Ohio for your licensing, but only in person in Columbus, Ohio at the Home Inspector Training Institute. So I'm an infrared geek. I love the technology. I love what I do. I give people and home inspectors my cell phone number all the time so that they can call me and text me when they have issues or questions when they're doing inspections. And so how can I help? That's what I tell everybody. Just let me know how I can help.
Well, today I wanted to invite you on the network just to kind of talk about, thermal cameras, the industry, and a lot of different things. But one of the things that troubles me a lot is inspectors need to understand the value of understanding the fundamental principles of the thermal camera. Can you just elaborate on that and like some common misconceptions of what inspectors may encounter in the industry? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. James, I've been telling folks for years the biggest problem with my industry, our industry, the infrared industry, is the fact that people refer to them as cameras and not thermal imaging systems. So the perception is that because it's a camera, all you have to do is take a picture. Let me put that in terms that the home inspector can understand. That's like, I own a home, therefore I can be a home inspector. That's not how it works. You can't be a home inspector until you learn how to do a home inspection. And you shouldn't be using an infrared camera unless you've learned the basic heat transfer concepts, emissivity, reflectivity, transmissivity, the basic fundamentals behind using an infrared camera. If it were only about taking a picture, I could cover that in 20 minutes. My CRT class is 2 days. And we spend 5 hours going through the heat transfer concept so that you understand what the limitations and capabilities of an infrared camera are. Unfortunately, the general public thinks that infrared cameras are magic. They are magical, but they're not magic, okay? They don't see through a single piece of paper. However, the general public sees, Hobbs and Shaw, the movie, where they're holding an infrared camera up to a door, and the movie camera doing the filming looks at the LCD screen, and it shows people on the other side of the door. So the general public, I think they call it artistic liberty. The general public thinks it's an X-ray machine that it can see into the wall. So infrared cameras have changed tremendously. I wish one day soon one of the organizations, whether and I'm not going to get into the different organizations out there, we're all aware who they are, but somebody needs to step up and say, you know what, that little $200 infrared temperature gun is not suitable for a home inspector to do moisture detection. I just tested it 2 weeks ago, and there should be minimum requirements set for infrared cameras that for home inspectors that want to use infrared cameras as part of their home inspection. I mean, cameras have gotten so much better and quite frankly, so much cheaper. and I'm not going to call any names out, but I just had someone post on one of the social media sites, what's a really good camera for less than 200 bucks? And I went, close your eyes and what do you see? And the answer is nothing. And that's the good camera you could buy for less than 200 bucks. Nothing. I mean, there are cameras in the infrared technology. It's no truer. You get what you pay for. Uh, I know, James, you have a G61. I've got numerous cameras here that they give you, great picture quality, more pixels per square inch, great thermal sensitivity. And then once you learn all of the applications use the infrared camera on, moisture being number one, no question about it. Finding plumbing leaks, water leaks, but from a safety perspective, electrical safety, you know, being able to save someone's life by looking at their electrical panel with the infrared camera. And people say, yeah, no, I'm telling you, this is why NFPA 70B was changed 2 years ago. And I just had a bunch of communication this weekend, on social media about NFPA 70B says that all commercial, industrial, and multifamily residential properties have to have an infrared inspection done at least every 12 months, and some facilities every 6 months. Why wasn't that applied to single family homes? A home inspector has found a connection on the side of a breaker hotter than anything I have ever seen in a commercial or industrial inspection in my 38-and-a-half-year career.
Mm.
1452-degree temperature reading on the side of a breaker. So they're out there. Anyway, there's so many applications, but understanding what the camera is showing you, how to interpret it, how to identify what is a true thermal anomaly, the difference between load and the difference between a connection issue. Load creates heat. In an electrical system, if you put a 20 amp breaker under 80% load, which is 16 amps, it's going to get warm. You got an electric water heater, you just tested the hot water at all of the sinks in the kitchen and the laundry room and all of that. You've drained that 40-gallon water heater. It's working overtime trying to heat that water back up. And it's normal to see both breakers get warm. It's normal to see both wires off of both of those breakers get warm and warm all the way out of the panel. That is normal load. So understanding what's normal and what's not normal is what we take you guys through in the certified residential thermography class. And this is a big problem because guys don't know what to look for. They don't know what they might have a camera and maybe they found something, but understanding what things should look like and what they shouldn't like is that learning curve of the 16-hour class, 5 hours on the science. I mean, literally 8 to 10 hours is on what things should and should not appear to be with the infrared camera, how they should look and how they shouldn't look, and how to interpret it, and how to, let's face it, how to do a much more thorough inspection.
I can hear your passion about the industry, and you touched on some of the applications, but I want to dive a little deeper into that.
Sure.
Inspectors are looking at different ways to expand their reach, change their businesses, look for different ancillary services, or possibly, identifying maybe a new revenue stream. Can you talk about some of these things like electric panel inspections? You mentioned 70B. I personally do some drone roof moisture mapping. There's so many different applications to use thermography. Can you talk
Right.
about some of those?
Sure. With the release, since we started with 70B, we'll talk about that. There is no NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, police. So there's nobody going out there knocking on people's doors saying, let me see your infrared report. I want to make sure you're NFPA compliant. But if, and big companies, eventually, with thousands of employees, eventually something might happen and OSHA's called in. And if OSHA walks through that door, OSHA's going to ask to see your NFPA compliance records, which is going to include the infrared inspection. So there have been a tremendous number of people over the last 2 years since this NFPA change of 70B, getting up to speed, learning how to do the industrial and commercial electrical inspections. Is a C5 or the Pocket 2 or the E6 probably the best camera to do that type of an inspection? Absolutely not. Those are good cameras for home inspectors, but the equipment is a bit different. If you're from the north, using an infrared camera on radiant heating systems, finding in slab radiant heat and whether it's working properly in a house or not, or electric radiant heat in the ceilings. There's no reason, once you've learned how to test it, how to do the timing and how you should turn things off ahead of time so that when you turn it on, it shows up longer. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to apply that to every car wash, open bay car wash in your community. So what I'm talking about, the ones you pull in, they got open doors on both sides. You pull in and dump $5 worth of quarters in there, and you self wand wash your truck or your vehicle. In the northern climates, every one of those open bay car washes have radiant heat in the concrete slab and radiant heat in the approach in and out of those bays. If that concrete's allowed to fall below 32 degrees, and then you go in there and wash your truck, here in Michigan, we call those skating rinks. Okay, so they have to have a boiler and a pump moving that hot water through a piping system to keep that concrete above the freezing temperatures. Energy audits. I have done thousands of them over the years where you go to a house and with the homeowner, not necessarily the buyer or the seller. So another avenue, I guess, or it could be the buyer, or whatever, using the infrared camera to show them how efficient. I mean, today is Monday morning, and here in Michigan, we're talking 97-degree temperatures with 105 to 107 degree heat index today. So everybody's going to be crying about how inefficient their air conditioners are or their insulation is. And there's no better way to find the voids in the insulation or the non-performing insulation. And people will pay, 350, 450, depending on the size of the house, to have that. I've got a that I use to pressurize water. So in addition to the infrared camera to see the static condition of the insulation within the walls, if you turn on the blower door, which depressurizes a home, and then go back around with the infrared camera, I can see all the infiltration points where that hot air today would be coming into a house. And if you can't control the air coming in and the air going out of your home, doesn't matter how good the insulation is. Think about that. If you've got R50 walls and R100 ceilings, you're living in a styrofoam cooler, okay? It's airtight, but then you open up that door and you open up that door, you don't control the air coming in and the air going out. It doesn't matter how good the insulation is. So the house has to work together as a system. It's a combination of getting the insulation installed and performing as it's designed to perform, and then controlling the air infiltration and exfiltration that will make your home a lot more comfortable and a lot more energy efficient. So yes, there are, radiant heating, in car washes. You can do energy audits. I mean, there is no government agency that says if I buy an infrared camera, I have to go to level 2 to do infrared inspections of car washes. There is no government agency that says if you buy an infrared camera, you must be a level 1 to do home inspection. That's, as I said before, that's the problem with our industry. There's nobody, even a government agency, that steps up and says if you buy an infrared camera, you have to get any training. But again, going back to what I started with this morning, buying an infrared camera and not learning how to interpret is dangerous, just like becoming a home inspector without learning how to interpret or how to do the inspection and call things out.
When you talk about inspectors not knowing what they're getting into, that makes me think about risk mitigation. So, having the thermal camera, wouldn't you think that the liability of the inspector would reduce by knowing how to operate it, by having a quality thermal camera, by having that training, and knowing how to apply it to whatever application that they're conducting in their inspection? Can you tell me, like, maybe a situation where you see that risk reduction? I mean, I know you're active on social media and different things of that nature. Do you have any examples of maybe another inspector that you've seen, or maybe even yourself?
Talk to your, I could give you hours worth of examples, but let me do this. Talk to your insurance companies. I cannot tell you how many times over the years of teaching the CRT class or talking at, you know, an ASHI conference or an InterNACHI conference or the Ohio's home inspector conferences, people say, yeah, I don't think I want to get into that infrared. It's going to increase my liability. The fact of the matter is, and this comes from the insurance industry, home inspectors that buy a good infrared camera, and that's a loaded question, what's a good infrared camera, get the training that qualifies them to perform those inspections. It's proven that those home inspectors are doing a much more thorough inspection, and their incidence of claims against their liability insurance is lower than those home inspectors that don't use infrared. That's not
Mm.
me saying that. That's the insurance company telling me that. Why wouldn't we provide, coverage on infrared? Home inspectors that know what they're doing with the infrared are finding those things that come back to bite them in the butt after the close. And moisture is number one. All of a sudden a stain materializes a month after that your client has bought that house. And that hidden moisture, without a doubt. I mean, but learning how to interpret it, oh my gosh, is so huge. Home inspectors have been using moisture meters for, well, how many years, James? 10 years or more, I would imagine. And
Since the conception of the business, almost. I mean, I
yeah,
remember when I first got into the industry, I had a moisture meter back in 2000s. So yeah.
are you sliding it over every square inch of the wall and the ceiling and the floor? No, you're putting it on stains. You're putting it on the bottom corners of windows or areas where you've had issues before. And I have so many sample images where there is absolutely no visual sign. It's not under a window, and there's a water thermal anomaly in the wall, 2 feet wide and 6 feet tall because of ice damming. And there's not a wrinkle in the paint. There's not a stain. There's no reason at all for me to put my moisture meter on that if I hadn't found it with the infrared camera. So the camera and the moisture meter together are a team. I mean, an infrared camera doesn't say it's wet. A moisture meter confirms what the infrared camera has found. Infrared camera doesn't say that breaker's overloaded. An infrared camera doesn't say that wall cavity is uninsulated. Okay, in 39 years of doing infrared, I've never heard an infrared camera say anything. It's the home inspector or the inspector in general that, looking at the LCD screen on their camera, misinterprets what they're looking at and overspeaks what the camera is showing them, that gets them in trouble. I have had two occurrences that come to mind every class I teach, where a home inspector called out everything behind the wall is wet. So they tear down the drywall and it's perfectly dry. Another past student called me on the phone and said, "Hey, did FLIR come out with an infrared camera that says it's wet?" And I said, "No." And he says, "I got a call from a contractor that I know that he was hired to tear up the vinyl flooring in the house because another home inspector using an infrared camera said all of the subfloor under the vinyl flooring is wet. He's torn up all the vinyl flooring and the subfloor is perfectly dry." So who's paying to put that wall back together or put that vinyl flooring back down? The home inspector that misinterpreted what he was looking at, misspoke what he was seeing, and misrepresented what the infrared camera is capable of doing. That's why training is so important. Does it have to be the 4-day level one? No. If you're just doing moisture, come to the infrared moisture detection class. It's 1 day. If you're a home inspector and you're using it on electrical and pest infestations and radiant heating systems and energy diagnostics and everything else you can do in a home, then come to the 2-day class. That's the one that'll get you, all of the training and interpretation skills you need. Under slab water leaks, argon depletion in insulated windows. When the argon filled gap between two panes of glass, when the argon gas has left that space before the seal breaks, we can see that. There's just so many applications. Broken seals. Let me see if this is going to come up. I don't know if I can change it now or not, but my background, I put up a background picture before we started this recording. If I can figure out how to do it while we're talking, I will. But you can actually see where when a window has a broken seal, it doesn't perform as good as an insulated window where the seals are still intact. So there's a lot of different stuff we can do, but you got to learn how to interpret. Everything we do with an infrared camera, whether it's a refinery or a flat roof moisture detection or the insulation in the walls of a home or the electrical panel or moisture, every application using an infrared camera is condition based. And what I mean by that, you have to have the right conditions to do electrical. You have to have the right conditions to do flat roof moisture. You don't, and I can tell you this, 2 o'clock this afternoon in the brilliant sunshine is not the time of day to take your infrared camera out on a low sloping flat roof building to do subsurface possible roof moisture and saturation. You got to have the right conditions, right time of day. And that's what we go through in the training class. So
let's talk about technology, trends, advancement. What are you seeing? I know Monroe's going through some changes. I know some of you guys' classes are evolving. Talk to me about what you see in these trends that inspectors should be looking out for. How can we get ahead of that curve? What new advancements are coming our way?
So everybody knows FLIR has been, FLIR, FLIR has been the leader in infrared cameras, since the late 80s, early 90s, when FLIR was formed out of the merger of the 5 leading infrared camera manufacturers in the world. Indigo, Inframetrics, Agema, all of these top manufacturers merged to form FLIR. And they held at that time 90% of the world market on the handheld thermal. I mean, it was a monopoly, okay? And there's been companies that have come and gone. Micron, Cincinnati Electronics. I mean, there's been, Electrophysics, ISI Group. I mean, there's a lot of companies that have gone by the wayside because of that conglomerate or that, monopoly that they had. But in the last 5 years, we have had a shift in camera technology in that there are new players in the game. Hike Micro, Photric. Now tariffs are starting to even hit FLIR. Okay, so anything coming from overseas, whether it's from China, whether it's from Europe, everybody's getting hit with these tariffs. But Photric is one that their warehouse and calibration center in Santa Clara, California, will be their assembly facility by fourth quarter this year. So there's a there's a trend that stuff's coming stateside. They use French detectors. They good cameras. And what has happened is FLIR is still the giant. FLIR is still when you're going to go out and you're going to go buy a $50,000 camera to do substations and long, they're still the key player in that market. But in the lower cost camera market, like let's face it, home inspection market or energy auditor market, FLIR hasn't changed their EX cameras, the E8, then the E8 XT, and now the E8 Pro. They haven't changed the resolution in 10 years. It's still 9 hertz, only takes a digital picture. I'm not trashing, I don't want to trash any one camera manufacturer. But with the introduction of Hike Micro and Photric, you now have 10,000 pixel detectors, video with audio, laser pointers, 2 batteries, 2 and 3 year warranties, service centers right here in the States for what, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000? I mean, head and shoulders better than other manufacturers at that same price point. The technology, what I've seen, the trend, I mean, you couldn't buy a 640 by 480 handheld camera 5 years ago for less than $28,000. And now for $5,000 or $6,000, you can buy a 640 by 480. I mean, the technology, the pixel count, that's number of pixels per square inch, or that totally make up the picture quality, is going up, which makes your picture better. And the thermal sensitivity, how small is a temperature can a camera detect, is getting smaller and smaller, which is better. And those are that technology that was $20,000 to $30,000 5 years ago is now at $3,000 to $6,000. I mean, it's incredible, the newer cameras today. But there are still limitations. You still, please do yourself a favor and don't go out and spend $200 on an infrared camera, because you're going to get what you pay for. And you're not going to have the resolution, you're not going to have the thermal sensitivity to find the thermal anomalies that you're expecting to see when you do your home inspection. I don't know what else to say. Picture the camera quality, and it has gotten so much better. Is the E6 still a good camera? The E6 XT still a good camera? Absolutely, absolutely. Is the E8 and E8 XT still a good camera? Absolutely. Do I have to, just throw it away and upgrade? That's your call. But I don't think, there's still very good equipment for certain applications. The applications dictate the camera you're going to need. I would never use an E6 or the wide field of view lens on those cameras, the 45-degree field of view lenses on those cameras to go out to a substation. You have to have the right resolution, the right thermal sensitivity, and the right optics, the right lens on that camera to get the detailing that you need to get an accurate temperature of that insulator 75 feet away, or that connection 75 feet away, or 50 feet away, whatever it is. So, the right camera with the right options for the right application, or for certain applications.
So, Bill, in closure, what do home inspectors need to do to improve their training? Can you tell me how we could, go about taking advantage of some of this training at Monroe Infrared? How
Sure.
would I sign up for this training? What would be the steps I would take to do so? And any other pertinent information that you would like to share with us, here at the Ohio Home Inspector Network and inspectors in general throughout the U.S. And even abroad. Like what would be the steps for that, if I wanted to be a better inspector?
You can call, you can call, pick up the phone and call me. You can call our corporate office at 207 985 7110. Again, that's 207 985 7110. They can transfer you to me. They can transfer you. Ted Woodward handles our signing you up for level one or level two, or we can get you registered for the CRT or the IMD class. You can go to MonroeInfrared.com, as you can see right here, MonroeInfrared.com, and click on the training tab, and you can see we are a training partner with the Infrared Training Center, which is FLIR's training arm. But if you have a Hike Micro or a Photrick, it doesn't matter what camera you bring to training. You can register. You can see the complete upcoming calendar of classes, whether they're virtual or in person. I think the entire class listing for level one and level two is on our website through the end of this year. I'm adding classes, usually every month or every other month. I do at least one, if not two, CRT classes, the Certified Residential Thermographer classes. And those are $695 for the 2-day class if you register for a class more than 30 days in advance. $795 if you register within 30 days. Then the infrared moisture detection class, if you want to know the basic science and your main objective is to use the infrared camera for moisture detection, you can attend just the infrared moisture detection, which is day one of the 2-day CRT class. So that's a change I made about a year and a half ago. Guys have come, like I did this for the IW on the road in St. Louis last year. In person, we did day one, the infrared moisture detection class, and we had 13 people in the room. Of those 13 people, 11 then signed up after that class to attend day two virtually using Zoom and got the certified residential thermographer certification. They learned the rest of it for home inspectors. So we're willing to work with you. If Ohio has, if your company has 8 people, 10 people, and you want me to come to you, we can set that up. So call me, call Ted Woodward, call Monroe Infrared. We are now part of Guidant Power. So our company theme is electrical safety. We do, within Guidant Power, we do electrical safety training, and I'm working with, and I have a question before I sign off. Is there any electrical safety training requirements? I know you guys do electrical training, but I'm talking about the arc flash hazard training and how to properly remove an electrical panel. And, is there any, and that's what I've approached our electrical, Guidant Power has electrical safety training. They do arc flash studies in commercial and industrial properties. And infrared is what we've been calling for 20 years, the electrical infrared inspection, safety inspection, because it's proven that using infrared cameras on an electrical circuit reduces the risk of electrical failures and explosions and people getting hurt. Pick up the phone and call us. My cell phone is 586 350 5890, and I'm available 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Please be respectful and don't call me after 8, 9 o'clock at night because I'm old and I like to go to sleep. But we're here to help. And I tell guys every class I teach, I've learned how to do a lot, and I love sharing that knowledge with everybody that comes through my classes. There is no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is one that goes unasked. I've learned how to do a lot. The one thing I've not learned how to do is read people's minds. So if you don't ask the question, I won't know you have a question. So if you have a question, don't think it's stupid. There is no such thing as a stupid question. My group, the Certified Residential Thermographer, is a Facebook group, and it was designed and developed for home inspectors after they've come through the CRT for a place to learn and expand what they can do with the infrared. You know, I as I said, I follow, I don't know, 18 or 20 different groups, and some of them get pretty nasty. I don't know any other way to put it. You know, how do you call yourself a home inspector? You're asking infantile questions like that. This is what this group, the Certified Residential Thermographer group, was designed for, is for people that are learning so they know what things should look like, or they can post a picture. I get guys texting me an infrared image all the time. Hey, what do you think? Is this what it's supposed to look like? So I'm here to help, but you got to ask for the help. Again, Bill Fabian at Monroe Infrared. That's www.monroeinfrared.com, or Bill F at monroeinfrared.com. So let me know
Thank you
how I
very
can
much.
help.
Thank you very much, Bill. The Ohio Home Inspector Network thanks you for coming on Inspector Talk. I really, really appreciate it. We're definitely going to get this out on the social media. The goal is to help inspectors in their journey become better at their jobs. And so I believe that thermal imaging is a huge part of that journey. So with that, we're signing off. And again, thank you, Bill.
No, thank you, James, for what you do for the home inspection industry.
Will do. I really appreciate that. We're definitely trying to drive and help inspectors become better. And it's a community. We really
Absolutely.
need to really raise the bar in our community and give our customer base, you know, our home buyers and sellers the quality that they deserve. So,
I,
Ohio Home
yeah.
Inspector Network, Inspector Talk, signing off.